Speaker.
Catherine Delahunty.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker. Nā mihi nui ki te Tiarawa waka, Ngāti Rangi Te Aorere, Ngāti Rangi Wewihi, Tapu Eka, nau mai haramai ki te whare paramata koutou whare. It is wonderful to see you in all your splendour and your generations present with us today. Before I start talking about the bill, I'd just like to pay tribute to the descendants of Tamata Kapua. I live in Hauraki and I've spent many of my years at the foot of Te Moi Ngā Hou o Tamata Kapua, the sacred mountain. In 1980, a mining company from Canada said they would turn the mountain into a lake for us. And without Te Arawa, that may have happened. So thank you, because your rangatira came and they said, skin and hair will fly before you touch this maunga. And so it was that the mountain could not be touched. And we have not forgotten you. We are grateful in Hauraki for that leadership, that rangatiratanga. This third reading is an extraordinary achievement, and it says much about the extraordinary tenacity of the rangatira of these three iwi. It also is important to acknowledge the Minister of Māori Affairs, the Minister for Treaty Settlements, and the Māori Affairs Select Committee and their chair. I can't do justice to this, let alone in the time, but I do want to acknowledge that this is an important and great day. The rohi of these three iwi is one of the most beautiful, fertile and diverse rohi. It's a thermal energy wonderland, and the once sparkling rivers and pure lakes and coasts were so beautiful and valuable, hence the colonial enthusiasm for their appropriation by hook or by crook. Making it right is not a single action through a treaty settlement process. It's a national project into the future, and it enhances all of us, and I'm speaking to my own Pākehā whakapapa here, all of us, to engage with it. The work that you have done, the mahi that you've done, is an intergenerational koha, not only to your people, but to Aotearoa. So thank you for that. To Ngāti Rangi Te Aorere, I do not claim any special knowledge of your rohi, though I have passed through it many times, past Tanai, and I was very interested to read the history. But I would like to highlight the way in which establishing 19th century historical hurts and thefts are not the only challenge to be faced by tangata whenua here. For example, this iwi has had to fight the renaming of the ancestral maunga whakapaunako in the 2000s. The Waitangi Tribunal in 2007 found the Crown had breached the Treaty of Waitangi by failing to consult fully with Ngāti Te Rangi Aorere about this proposal in a timely manner. And so that is why the Greens always say that we resist the term full and final settlement, because these situations continue, whether it's the Takatai Moana or the attempt to rename an ancestral maunga, or Patricia Grace and her whānau having to fight for their land in 2014. The contemporary breaches or proposed breaches must be brought before the tribunal. The ability to negotiate justice via te treaty must never be shut down. I'd like to acknowledge the achievement of Ngāti Rangi Te Aorere in maintaining through the turbulent years of colonisation many of their taonga assets, despite the Crown's best efforts. And particularly want to wish you the very best with your future, your quantum and your cultural redress. In relation to Tanai, Roto Kauau, Waiohewa, Te Kitere, Okataina, the Taniwhara's individual title and its collective strength that will restore these assets in this land. Individual title brought through the Māori Land Court and every other mechanism has been a contamination of rangatiratanga. But we have faith that through this process you are restoring the collective rangatiratanga. To Ngāti Rangi Wewihi, this historical account is sadly typical. Irrespective of their previous relationships in the post-Waitangi signing period of 1840 to 1850s, when things went kind of good, the Raupatu was extreme against the so-called rebels. Who gets to call who a rebel in this country is an interesting, ongoing subject for debate. What is rebellion against injustice? Are you a rebel? But 290,000 hectares around Tauranga were confiscated, including land in which Ngāti Rangi Wewihi had considerable interests. And then there is the tragic story of Kiriopa Tarau and how the Crown killed his whānau in Waikato and the subsequent consequences we've heard about in other bills before this House, including those associated with mokomoko and whakatohea, but also the impact on Te Arawa katoa. At Nongotaha, a place where I spent many holidays in complete ignorance of these things, like so many Pākehā, Taniwha Springs is a symbol of abuse. The collection of springs central to Ngāti Rangiwewehe's identity was compulsory acquired for waterworks in 1966. So we're not just talking 19th century, we're talking 20th century, 21st century, by local government because the Crown had refused to make any other water available. Layer upon layer of alienation, and all of us who've drunk the water, we have no understanding of this and are ignorant to the damage done around Nongotaha. So I just want to mihi te Ngāti Rangiwewehe for those issues. Though you have obviously done well, there is so much more that we all need to do to understand what it is that you have been through. Lastly, to Tapueka, again, these stories are unique. There may be patterns of similarity, but they're all different. I just want to to focus on two aspects of the settlement bill in relation to Tapueka. One is to do with the Public Works Act, a wonderful, familiar monster, which involves more theft. The Crown acknowledges that they took land. This is what gets me when I read this stuff. That took the land from Tapueka Urupa at Kenana 3 times. And the Urupa was in use at the time. And they did not consent to any of these takings, but this continued. And the Urupa, which is still in use today, is now divided in two by a highway and a railway line. And we drive through this oblivious to the pain, the mamai, and if it was our whānau, we might be thinking again. So I want to acknowledge the Public Works Act has been another tool, alongside, as my colleague has talked about, the Murray Land Court, alongside the engine of colonisation. And there is no more abuse you can do to people than to desecrate their urupa. None. I'd also like to acknowledge the kaitona. Now, last night I got up in the house and fought for Tarawera, another awa in the rohe, because it's deeply contaminated, as I'm sure you know. But kaitona has a similar and equally tragic history. And when you look at the how the river was to how the river is, the modification, pollution, degradation. I found this phrase in the settlement bill very interesting. The Crown has failed to respect and provide for and protect the special relationship. That's a bit of an understatement. I find it a little bit of an understatement. Failed to. The Crown has actively facilitated the modification, pollution and degradation of kaitona. Kaitona. Now, I live next to a river in Hauraki, which is full of eels. One of them bit me the other day just to remind me where I was. And, that it's an awesome experience, but that's what every river should be like. That's the Waiwhakauranga in the Kauronga Valley. But that's how every awa should be. Those tona have a right to bite, just as the tangata whenua have the right to collect them for kai. And so kaitona has been it's been desecrated by sewage, by the draining of wetlands, by the farming practices. It's affected wahitapu, it's destroyed kaimoana and compromised water supply for these communities. But it's always more than that, because people's whakapapa and identity, as I have been taught by tangata whenua, relates deeply to not only their maunga but to their awa. So contaminate awa, you contaminate the people. And I believe we're all contaminated by the pollution we've subjected this country to, but we are not able to claim and should never claim the site-specific whakapapa responsibilities that were damaged during this process in the Bay of Plenty, and particularly to kaitona. So to look forward positively to the future, I wish the kaitona all the best, the river, but also the people who are going to manage the co-governance. As iwi know better than anyone else, co-governance is a huge challenge, but it's also an opportunity, just as long as Pākehā are listening, as well as exercising well-resourced bureaucratic participation, because we're very good at that, and it doesn't always help. However, I'm getting the sign. So I'd just like to say to you all, thank you for the privilege of speaking about your rohi. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. Kia kaha katoa.
Speaker.
Honourable Tau Henare.
Te arawa waka, te arawa iwi, nau mai hara mai ki tō.
Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. Kia kaha katoa.
Speaker.